Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is week 9 of the College Football Game Day Show, presented by From the Stands, and presented with me by these two boys. It is Andy Hopper and Tom Scavetta with me again for the 9th week of the season. 10th week for them, because they did run the first week of the season for me as I was gone there. But it is spooky season.
Ran 2 weeks for you.
That is true. Well, one I was in hiding. From a giant hurricane. Could not stop that one. But it is spooky season. We see some spooky games out there. This is, of course, our Halloween episode, as Halloween coming up next Thursday. So we got some spooky segments here, some little scary action, and some pictures from the boys here. But we'll run it off with, as we always do, our weekly recap of week 8. Andy, we'll start with you here. What were you watching week 8? And well, I mean, I know where you were, but
yeah.
So talk us through that, and then let us know what else you were watching.
Yeah, it was an awesome Saturday in Champaign, Illinois. The buzz was palpable. Boys, the tailgating scene was something that is just magical to see on a Saturday. A sea of orange, and I will say a very nice contingent of Michigan fans as well. They travel to watch their Wolverines in bunches, but it was awesome. I mean, I told you guys before the show, the atmosphere in the stadium, I think, was probably the best I've ever been in my 20 years of living here, which is saying something, because we've seen some good football games and some good teams come through here, but the energy in that place was incredible. Illinois got the 21-7 win, and it was the defense that just shined through for Brett Bielema's team. Gabe Akis was an absolute menace, guys. 13.5 tackles. He had a forced fumble, 2.5 sacks on the day. He was getting in Tuttle's face and basically getting whatever he wanted on the pass rush. Luke Altmaier, you're going to look at his stats and you're going to think, wow, that wasn't really the best day for him. Only 80 yards through the air, but he had a nice touchdown pass to Tanner Arkin in the corner of the end zone, as well as a tough 1-yard rush where he ended up losing his helmet. I don't know if you guys saw that picture of him. He's staring the Michigan defender in the face as he's over the end zone with his helmet off and his tongue out like this. He's Luke, that is my quarterback. But yeah, so Jack Tuttle actually ended up with 208 yards and an interception for Michigan, but he is probably their best option at quarterback, but it's still not great. They have a lot to work on for Michigan. They still have a very, very good defense. Khalil Mullings is a very good back. He had 87 yards and a touchdown on 19 carries. Colston Loveland got loose a little bit for them with 83 yards on 7 catches. But, man, this day belonged to Illinois. Throwback uniforms looked awesome. The helmets, the spray-painted helmets in person were great. If you haven't seen those leather helmets yet, go check those out. But we're 6-1. We're feeling fun. We are bowl eligible in fucking October, boys. If you would have told me this would have happened at the beginning of the year, I would have told you were crazy. The expectations were not this, but we have, I think more wins over ranked teams than just about anybody this year. So I'm looking forward to going on the road and playing Oregon here this week. But some other games that I was watching, how about Indiana just absolutely punking the shit out of Nebraska? Auburn almost got Missouri on the road, but the Tigers eke it out 21-17. Miami and Louisville was an instant classic. I mean, just points on top of points, 52-45. Miami, they stay perfect. And then how about, Alabama and Tennessee? Tennessee handing Alabama their second loss of the year. I think this is the first time Alabama's had 2 losses in October since I think like 2008 or something like that. It has been quite a while since that has happened. And the last one I'll mention was Georgia. Looked like the best team in the country on Saturday, absolutely having their way with Texas. Ewers got benched for Arch Manning, and then Ewers got put back in the game because Arch didn't do much better, but a 30-15 final for Georgia, and it was never really close at all, guys. Sorry, I know, as always, I take way too much time in my recap, but that is what it is.
No, I love it. I love the live recap from the Illinois game. Incredible game. I know you joked about it 2 weeks ago about flying to Oregon for the game, but I mean, it's your birthday week, maybe?
Here's my dilemma with that. I took an absolute beating on the NFL this last Sunday, and also, so I've got to do the last senior night for the football I do PA announcing for is tomorrow, so Friday. So get this, like 50 plus fucking players, dance team, cheerleaders, and band members that are all seniors I have to announce before the game. So depending on how that game goes, hopefully we just beat the shit out of this team and we get a running clock in the second half. But I'm looking at getting out of there around 10. So I have looked at flights. They're about $1,000, about $300 for a hotel room. My buddy Luke did text me. He goes, I'm asking all my Illini fan friends this: if it would guarantee a win, would you fly to Eugene on Saturday morning? And I'm like, oh, I'm in.
Absolutely.
But I was looking. I think the earliest I could leave Indianapolis at 8 a.m. and land in Eugene, I think at 12:30 Pacific time. So I would have 2 hours. I would have 2 hours
jet lag
to get ready for the game. So I mean, I'll fucking do it.
After all that, I'll fucking do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be an incredible experience. Tom, what were you watching in Week 8?
First off, Andy, happy early birthday to you.
Thanks, buddy.
I hope your Illini do it for you again this week. Yeah, look, there was a lot to go over this week. I'll make a bold statement here. Georgia was and is still the best team in college football. They never officially lost that title, in my opinion. They just lost to their kryptonite in Alabama. But knocking off Texas, I told you guys off air a little story I had about a couple Georgia fans talking in the airport last Thursday. How about them dogs? 5:30 in the morning. They went and they played well. Well, except for Carson Beck, of course. They still won with Carson Beck throwing 3 interceptions. I still think, despite Ewers throwing 2 touchdowns, he had the worst game of the 2 quarterbacks, in my opinion. I know a Georgia fan who disagrees with that statement, but Ewers also lost 2 fumbles. Beck was a lot more minded when running with the football, making plays for his team. Trevor Etienne 3 scores, and the Dogs had 7 sacks. Jalen Walker, his draft stock is rising, boys. 3 sacks for him. Michael Williams with 2 sacks. Those guys looking really good. Andy, you mentioned Miami and Louisville. 97 combined points. Cam Ward, 4 touchdowns, 319 yards. Tyler Shook, 4 touchdowns, 342 yards. Cam Ward, in my personal opinion, has been the best quarterback in the nation up to this point this season. Indiana, locked to cover every week. Dylan Raiola, 3 picks. He sucks. Jalen Milroe also looked awful against Tennessee, guys. 2 interceptions, a fumble that Bama did recover, but Tennessee really relied on their run game. Nico got banged up in this game. He was able to come back in, do enough to win. I believe the year was 06. I think we said 08 before, but I'm pretty sure it was 06.
That makes sense. I'm usually wrong.
2 times since 06 that Tennessee has beaten Alabama. 2 out of the last 3 meetings, though. And yeah, Brian, that's my recap for the week. And also Notre Dame beating Georgia Tech. No Haynes King. No problem. Yep. Notre Dame took them out. And yeah, that wraps up week 8 for me.
I love it. Yeah, for me, I'll start with a little Friday action. Obviously, Oregon. I know Tom said Georgia at number 1, which I think a lot of people probably still would agree with. But Oregon now has a top spot, at least in the polls. They rolled over Purdue 35-0. They'll be up against Andy's Illini this week. And then the Friday night lights out game, that is Duke taking down Florida State, who is now 1-6, just absolutely horrible. And our theme segment's coming up. As you can tell, this is going to be Halloween themed. A lot of scary stuff. FSU will be involved, I promise you that. And then Georgia over Texas. Yeah, I mean, looking at that game, I know I wanted Texas to win for the whole Vanderbilt situation going on, to go up against another number 1. But yeah, when I was talking myself through that game, everything I was looking at, Georgia's just an absolute beast of a team. And then last second, they also decided to not bring their dog mascot, the living one, Uga. I believe they're on the 11th. Yeah. And the quote from them was that he was too immature for the game. I saw that and I was like, oh, they're locked in. They're not bringing Uga because of the immaturity. Obviously, the Georgia off-field issues and that immaturity. Seems like they're getting locked in now, so they get that win. Miami over Louisville, like you said, incredible game, 97 points. Tyler Shook out-throwing Cam Ward. So that was an incredible game to watch. You guys mentioned the Tennessee over Alabama. I'll quickly say USF, God, we suck. We could have won that game 28-14 over a top 10 team, and now we're going to get probably wrecked again by another top 12 team in BYU this week, so that's going to be
your favored.
Very fun. We are. I don't know how. Hey, the Gus Bus does seem to pull like one incredible win per year off, so maybe that'll be this one. And then another one I want to bring up just very quickly, Lincoln Riley, what are they going to do with him at USC? They lose to Maryland after being up 28-14, and I was rooting for that Maryland win all second half as they screwed up my parlay. So if you're going to screw up my parlay, you better take the L, and Maryland did close that one out 29-28. So yeah, Lincoln Riley has lost 14 of the last 20 games for USC. So that's a couple grains of salt there for anyone that's a USC fan looking at a potential hot seat there. But that'll bring us into our first theme segment as I will wrap up the weekly recap. It is Trick or Treat. We have a trick and a treat from each of us here. There we're going to list, obviously, the trick, the negative, and the treat, you know, a little something nice that we've seen this season. Andy, we'll start with you. What is your trick?
Yeah, I think the trick is everybody got it fucking tricked with at the beginning of this year, and it is the Florida State Seminoles, preseason top 10 team that is now 1-6 and absolutely fighting for their lives. All the hype around this team in the offseason, the talk of all the transfers they brought in, all these guys from Alabama that Nick Saban's hyping up. You got DJU, like him or love him. There was talk about this guy, and then it has just been an absolute dumpster fire on the field. 24-21 loss to Georgia Tech to start the year. 28-13 loss at home to Boston College. 20-12 loss at home to Memphis. The fucking Mike Norvell's former team coming in there and whooping up on them. I love to see that. Their lone win of the year is against California, no less. A team actually playing pretty well. SMU just beats the shit out of them 42-16. Clemson 29-13. Duke 23-16. Where does it end? Look at the schedule the rest of the year, guys. I don't know if they went well. They'll beat Charleston Southern, maybe.
Let's hope.
I think they're staring at a 2-10 year in the face. You have Miami this weekend. They're not beating Miami. I think North Carolina is good enough to beat them, as bad as North Carolina is. They've got to play Notre Dame, Tommy. The Golden Domers are going to dog walk them. Charleston Southern, who they welcome in on November 23rd to Tallahassee. That'll be a bye game that I hope they fucking lose. And then end the year with the rivalry game of Florida State. They will be at home. God, talk about the toilet bowl. But yeah, this has been an absolute trick. I feel sorry for Florida State fans, to be honest with you. But this all goes back to 3-2-1 Knoll. If you eat the dog shit, this doesn't happen, okay? You put the curse on your team, and you got to fucking own that, all right? We had this other guy, this other Florida State fan saying, you know what? He stepped up to the plate, said he'd do it.
Yep.
They lost to Duke, posted the video, and that video turned out to be fake. I don't know if you guys watched it, but
I had my suspicions, yeah.
It shows him in the video picking up shit, and then they did some editing magic, and he actually ate a piece of chocolate. And he came out and said that after the video. So you say you're going to eat dog shit. You don't actually eat dog shit. This is what happens. Your team is dog shit.
Yeah, I think the curse will definitely continue. The thing that it wasn't even the eating or like the look of the chocolate looking fake. It was the reaction of the guy who had the dog. Like just an absolutely awful actor. Hey, can I pick up your dog shit? Don't worry about it. I'm just doing a good deed. And the guy just absolutely, like, he had the lines locked and loaded, but he's clearly never acted before in his life. He's like, oh, okay. Why would you do that? But yes, if you want to, sure. And then he, off screen, the kid runs like, what, 20 feet away and then eats it as if the guy wouldn't see him do that that he just ran away from with the dog. Absolutely ridiculous. What's your treat here?
So my treat, it's pretty obvious, is my football team, the Fighting Illini. They are 6-1, the opposite of Florida State. There were very little expectations, I would say, on this team at a national scale. I can't really speak for what was going on inside the building, because from the way they've spoken all year, they seem to have been pretty confident in themselves that this was something that they could do. But they're 5-0 at home. Their only loss comes to Penn State, who's now number 3 or number 4. I'd say that looks pretty good. You've had one little hiccup there with the 50-49 win over Purdue in overtime, but hey, you won the game. That's in the past. Now you're staring at number 1 Oregon in the face. You got Luke Altmaier, who at this point of the year, I think he had 7 turnovers to 4 touchdowns. Now he has, I think, 15 touchdowns to 1 interception. He has been incredible for Illinois, making great decisions with the ball. And he is just so athletic and so tricky with his feet that he can hurt you in multiple ways. The receivers have been incredible with Franklin and Pat Bryant. The running backs, Caden Fagan, unfortunately, is out for the rest of the year. He dislocated his hip, which is not good. But he has had surgery on that, and it has started the rehab process. So hopefully he will be able to come back next year just as strong. But Josh McCray has stepped up in a big way. Aiden Lowry had a big game with like 57 yards last week. So it's going to be running back by committee. But and then this defense, I think the biggest question for me was the defense coming into the year with how they looked last year. Second-year defensive coordinator Aaron Henry with one of the best defensive performances that I've seen from this team last week in a long time, holding Michigan to 7 points. Say what you want about the offense, but they absolutely dominated that game in the trenches, in the secondary, in all phases of that defensive game. But yeah, that is my treat, man. It has been an absolute ride. I said it earlier. You go into Oregon this weekend and you have nothing to lose. They're the number 1 team in the country. Go see what you can do. Win or lose in this Oregon game, they'll be favored in their last 4 games of the year. Minnesota, Michigan State, Rutgers, and Northwestern. I think those are all 4 winnable games. But that's a lot easier said than done. You still have to go win them. But Illinois has a possibility of going 11-1, 10-2, if not 11-1, which that hasn't happened in quite a while here. So it's been an absolute treat. We are holding on to the seat of our pants and just hoping that this ride continues.
I love it. Dom, give us your trick and your treat here.
So for the trick, it is my least favorite college football program, the Michigan Wolverines. They're starting a 6th-year walk-on at quarterback now, 6th, 7th, whatever the hell he is. I mean, this is an absolute chicken shit offense. It's bad. They rank 129th in passing offense. They turn the ball over a lot. They don't convert on 3rd down. They're far too predictable. Sharon Moore does not have this team in a good place. Their biggest issue this offseason, we could talk about the quarterbacks all we want, but you have to highlight they didn't go out and get a guy in the transfer portal to replace J.J. McCarthy. Everyone else is doing it. Why aren't you? Why aren't you? Maybe it was the fact that they downgraded at head coach. No disrespect to Moore, but Harbaugh was a legend there. Right. And now you're in a position where you've got nothing. They've lost back-to-back games on the road to Washington, Illinois. Davis Warren, Alex Orji, Jack Tuttle, there's no answer. And Tuttle has looked the best out of those 3. And he is a walk-on, guys. This is really, really bad. But it's not just the quarterbacks. It's the receivers, too. If the receivers are dropping passes, they're not doing them any favors. So, look, I wasn't expecting them to repeat as national champions. But the fact that it's week 9 and they're not even receiving votes to be in the top 25, have you guys looked at the AP rankings? Not only are they out, they're no longer receiving votes. That's really, really bad. So for my trick, it's the Michigan Wolverines. I was not expecting this from them at all. I thought the standard would have been much higher this season, and they would have at least been in the top 25, if not made the CFP. So that's my trick.
All right, and your treat?
I have to be careful when I say treat. My fiance's dog, when she hears treat, it's time to eat one. But I'm sure Andy's in a similar situation. But anyway, it's Texas A&M. It's Texas A&M. They have 1 loss this season, and it was to my boys. They have not lost since. Kyle Field is such a tough place to play. And here's the X factor to that, guys. Mike Elko has been a real treat to watch on the sidelines, coach college football games. He's instilled a winning culture. They haven't lost since week 1. They won games without Connor Wegman for a while. They didn't really lose a step with Marcel Reed. And let's be real, boys. They don't need either of their quarterbacks to do a lot. This offense is, they're featuring the run. They're featuring defense. You look at Nick Scorton. You look at guys like that are getting to the quarterback. And let's look at this. They destroyed Missouri 41-10. The real test for them is LSU this weekend. And I think if you're Texas A&M, you have to be really happy with the way this program has flip-flopped. For Andy's treat, he picked Illinois. Illinois was better than Texas A&M last year, in my opinion. But I think for Texas A&M, it was a more drastic turnaround. And I think you can compare the turnaround to that in a sense, especially first-year head coach coming from the ACC. That's why the Aggies have been my treat through 8 weeks of the season.
I love it. For mine here, I'll throw up my trick. It is the Utah medical staff. And I don't know who is really the subject of the trick here, if it is just Cam Rising's complete lack of luck, the actual medical staff, or just karma of some degree that we don't know about. But yeah, Cam Rising has 2 back-to-back phenomenal seasons, takes the Utes to the Rose Bowl in back-to-back years, 2021. He's got 23 touchdowns and 2,300 yards. Then they go back to the Rose Bowl again, play Penn State. They're combined 19-7 those 2 seasons. But then he gets hurt. And the 2022 Rose Bowl on a run, probably shouldn't have been making that run in the first place, but what are you going to do? Kid's a competitor. So he misses the entire 2023 season. But it's 2024, he's back. Like we said, the red shirts can just keep flying now with what they're allowed. Medical red shirts left and right, everyone gets them. So he comes back, 2024. There's hype, right? Utah's number 12 preseason poll. Rising's a preseason Heisman favorite. It's looking good. Boom, gets hurt. Second game of the season. But wait, he misses 30 weeks, but he's back again. But then wait, he gets hurt again in his first game back. And he's going to be out now the rest of the season. After the injury to the Sun Devils, it ultimately shut him down for the season. We joke about it, but, like Andy said with DJ, Cam Rising, he could technically come back for what would it be, like his 8th season, yes. I believe. So
A lot of people go to college for 8 years.
Yeah, the Van Wilder of college football here. But you do feel bad for him. And I believe his last play, if he decides to not come back, rubbing salt in the wound, his last play of his college career will be an interception. So not great. But yeah, I feel so bad for him, but it's just been a complete trick. The last couple of years, we've been watching him and, hoping that him and Utah just rise into the playoff position. He's in the Heisman hunt and he just keeps getting hurt. So not great for him. And you do feel bad for him, but he is my trick because he's out for the season. And then my treat here is very quickly just going to be NIL in general, not just for the players making the money, but also for teams that aren't utilizing NIL. In the pro NIL side of things, we have obviously Vanderbilt, probably the biggest story here. They go and get Diego Pavia, absolutely running the table with his performances this year. Obviously, they take down #1 Alabama. He's looked great. And then Miami with Cam Ward, they get him from Washington State. He's a Heisman favorite in Tommy's eyes, probably the far and away Heisman favorite. And I tend to agree with that right now. But then on the other side, you also have the teams that have decided, internally that they don't want to use it. Obviously, Army, Navy, that's they can't utilize it. But look, Army ranked, Navy ranked, and they both are having some of their best seasons in the past few decades. And then Clemson up at #9. I know I personally, at least, have made fun of Dabo for saying that that the transfer portal was stupid. He didn't want to utilize it. He didn't think you were going to get lifetime players who are going to dig in for you out of the portal. So they don't utilize it, and they're sitting at #9 in the rankings right now. So both sides of the coin here working out for NIL. And for me, that's the treat because obviously as we talked about NIL coming into the college landscape, everyone said, oh, the top 5 or 10 teams with the most money are all going to take all these transfer players, and it's going to be the same teams at the top. We've got a ranked Vandy for the first time in a few decades, so I don't know what you guys are talking about, but it seems to be working pretty well in my eyes. And that'll wrap up the trick-or-treat segment and bring us into our second Halloween segment. It is House of Horrors. We each are going to give you one of our most horrific play situations, players, coaches, etc. So far from this season. Andy, we'll start with you. What is your House of Horror for this season?
Yeah, this is some real fucking horrific shit. Tom kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but it is the Michigan quarterback situation. So started off with Davis Warren, 444 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, total QBR of 40.7. Then they moved to Alex Orji, 148 yards, 3 touchdowns to only 1 interception, but a QBR of 39.8. He played in basically he started 1 game and then they were like, no, he started to cut 2. I'm sorry about that. So 10 for 18 for 86 yards against Minnesota, 7 for 12 for 32 yards against USC. Both of those wins, by the way. So I guess it's like, well, what can you really hate on him too much for that? And then Davis Warren, just for the sake of that, he started against Texas. Well, he started against Fresno State, 15 for 25, 118 yards, touchdown and interception. Lost 31-12 to Texas. He was 22 of 33 for 204 yards, touchdown and an interception. And then in the win versus Arkansas State, he was 11 for 14, 122 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. So technically, he did not throw an incomplete pass in his last start. He just threw 3 completions to the other team. And then finally, Jack Tuttle, he's taken over the past couple games, 306 yards, a touchdown, and to 2 interceptions for him, and a total QBR of 33.6. So it has been not so good for Michigan offensively as a whole. Obviously, the defending champions, they're sitting at 4-3. Tom mentioned it earlier, not ranked, not receiving votes, and that's because they don't deserve to, because they are not a very good football team right now. And I think it starts with that quarterback position. If you're Sharon Moore, if you're the offensive staff, how are you not looking at these guys and trying to build your offense around something that you could do, that you do better? Do you only know how to coach this one system because you don't have the players to execute it? Yeah. So something's going to have to change for Michigan going down the stretch.
All right. It is right when you sent that one in our group chat, I was like, that is truly a horrific one. Very, very scary. Tom, what's your House of Horrors for this year?
I think you guys know. Luckily, we're far removed from it at this point, but sadly, it still exists. Notre Dame's lost to NIU 16-14 back in week 2. You know, if you're just a regular college football fan that's not tied to Notre Dame, you love it. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you hate it. The Irish have learned from this loss and hopefully will not lose another game this season. If you notice, boys, since that loss, Notre Dame has pretty much won by a blowout in almost every single game that they've played against good football teams, too. Look, we lost our starting left tackle to start the season. We lost another couple offensive linemen, as well as our number one cornerback in Ben Morrison, who was a potential top 10 pick prior to the injury, which really sucks. Unfortunately, when this loss happened, I was told by a colleague of mine, I think I told you guys this off air once, Tom, you should want Marcus Freeman fired for that loss to NIU, because it happened the first year, too, where they lost to California. And to me, yes, it's a really, really bad loss, but he's a young head coach. He's won every game since. Are you not allowed to make mistakes? Are people, you make one mistake at your job, and then they're telling you should be fired? This culture that we have of just saying fire, fire, fire needs to stop. They lost one game to NIU. It was an awful loss. Look at all the other teams in the nation that have lost awful games this year. Notre Dame, since week 2, has been one of the most consistent teams in the nation. Not to mention, if Notre Dame hits that 52, 53-yard field goal at the end of regulation, we're not sitting here having this conversation right now. We're like, oh, that's another 2023 Washington-style win by the Irish. But no, we're here talking about NIU, and it makes me sick to my stomach. But to wrap this up, boys, even though we're 6-1 and we've looked great lately, there is no guaranteed win for Notre Dame left on their schedule this season because of this one game. Look at our remaining schedule. Navy at MetLife, which I'll be at, by the way. They should win, but it's not a guaranteed win. Florida State, you would think they'd dog walk them. But I don't know. Virginia. Army at Yankee Stadium, which I'll be honest, crazy. Neutral site location. That's really a home game for Army. Less than an hour away from West Point. And then USC. USC is always a tough game regardless. And I think that one is on the road. So I hate to say it, guys. People, Notre Dame should win out. They should. But there's no guaranteed win left because of this loss. You are capable. You have shown the nation and opened their eyes to say this. The Irish are prone to losing to anybody this season. You could throw out Buffalo or UMass, and it's not a guaranteed fucking win because Buffalo beat NIU. So that's what's horroring me throughout the course of this season. I'm much more confident in my team now than I was a couple of weeks ago. But, boys, there was a couple of weeks we had Notre Dame on the shots and chasers, and I absolutely shitted on them. I think 3 weeks ago they were playing Louisville. I'm like, take Louisville. I was not confident in them. I'm a little more confident now, though, and I just want to get over this. I hope all three of us forget about that NIU game and never bring it up again after this.
People don't forget.
Thanks, Andy.
Oh, man. I love it. And I'll throw mine up here as we wrap up this segment. It is FSU. This is a recent one here. FSU, 3 turnovers on 3 straight plays against Duke. For those listening to the podcast style on Spotify, etc., and can't see the video, starts off with a great pick 6 by Brock Glenn straight to Duke. And then he tries to run it. The very next play, they get the ball back, fumbles it, recovered by Duke. And then, again, very next possession, throws another interception. He was the player who led that FSU team last year when they had all those injuries against Georgia. You know, obviously people arguing should they or shouldn't they be in the playoff with a backup QB. I'm going to say that was probably a good decision based on the absolute lack of advancement this kid has made at quarterback. Obviously, you know, they did have DJ Uyunglele at QB. He's no longer available, so they put this kid back in, and he has gone nowhere. But I guess, you know, it's not like he's ruined FSU's season by playing so terribly. Their season was already gone. So that is my House of Horrors, and I'm sorry for any FSU fan that has to witness a season that has just been a House of Horrors. But that'll bring us into our weekly segment, our weekly betting segment. It is Parlay Party. Here are the rules. We have minimum 3 picks. Used to be 4. I moved it down because we've been taking L after L after L, and a minimum of a plus 1,000 payout. Andy, we'll start with you. Give us your parlay for week 9.
Oh, here we go, boys. It has been a frustrating year of parlays on the show and just parlays for me personally. Lost another SGP by 1 leg last night. 3 parlays missed by 1 leg this weekend in the NFL. So hopefully we can get one, see one go through the hoop here for my birthday weekend. So I'm going to start off with the Friday game. Boise State minus 2.5. I bought a point here to get that 3 point. I think they can win by a field goal here. They're going to UNLV. UNLV is having a great year. I just think Boise State's the better team. Indiana minus 6.5. They're hosting Washington. We have College Game Day coming to Bloomington, Indiana for the first time ever. Going to be a big one there. I think they had their 4th largest crowd in school history last week. You know they're going to bring it again this week. They have been a covering machine, like Tom has said earlier. So give me the Hoosiers. And then these last 2 picks, boys, I just want to preface this. I take no pride in doing this to both of you. And I feel kind of like a scumbag for doing it. But I'm seeing the board pretty well for college football picks, I'd like to say, so far this year. So this is what I'm going with. Navy plus 12.5 against Notre Dame at MetLife. Tom will be in the building. Tom, I don't need him to win. I just need him to lose by less than 12.5. Okay. That being said, we will consider sprinkling Navy money line. We will consider it. And lastly, UCF hosting BYU. You have a ranked BYU team. I know they are going on the road. It's a long trip from Utah to Florida, but you're getting them at plus 104. Ryan talked earlier about how USC had Iowa State on the ropes last week and ended up not being able to come through. I am unfortunately projecting that that will happen again. Again, you know what? I hate to pick against my boys. I really do hate to do it. But you put those 4 picks together, it'll be plus 11.44. $10 gets you $114.44. But it's really about the friends we make along the way, isn't it, guys? So yeah, that is my parlay for week 9.
It is, and it is very fair to throw UCF under the bus there because it is well deserved. Tom, what's your parlay for week 9?
Yeah, no offense taken. Navy has not lost this season, so not a terrible pick, even though I dislike it. All right, 5 legs for me. I bought points here. Indiana minus 9.5 against Washington. I'm that confident, boys. Plus 116. Yes, that is plus odds. Next up, I should really reverse the pick here, but I picked Illinois to cover plus 21.5 against minus 115. That's my second leg. Or Oregon, they're not winning. Can I just say one thing? I know it's coming up in shots and chasers. This is a disrespectful line. This is extremely disrespectful. Once again, this feels like the Penn State week all over. Illinois is guaranteed to cover this spread. Put the fucking mortgage on it. Next up, Vanderbilt plus 17.5 against Texas. That comes in at plus 100. A lot of turmoil with Texas over this past week. I mean, I think a little bit more than what's advertised, boys. Diego Pavia has a solid arm. Vanderbilt's at home. I think they can cover plus 100. Boise State, UNLV. I took the over in this game. Both offenses score very, very well. Over 62.5, minus 132. And then I sold points a bit here. I'm not revealing who I'm picking for this game yet, but I have LSU to cover plus 4.5 on the road at A&M. LSU has proven that they could win on the road this season against quality opponents. That comes in at minus 156. That's $10 for $222.95.
Love it. I'll throw mine up here. There we go. Mine also 5 on the card here, starting out with Illinois minus 6 versus Washington. Washington's all right, but Indiana's been absolutely killing it this season. I just wanted to get them under a touchdown. That's minus 123. Tom, you said you bought points, but did you mean you sold points? Because you had
went to 9.5.
Yeah, so you sold.
Sold, yeah, to bump that up there. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't write mine down. So I then bought, I believe, a half point on this one. Alabama minus 13 versus Mizzou. Mizzou has struggled. I mean, they're not losing, but they've struggled the last few weeks to get that offense revving, which is a bit surprising because Brady Cook has been absolutely crushing it, at least earlier in the season. I think Bama's going to be out. They can't lose again for the rest of the season, I don't think. Maybe they could still slide in like that 11-12 slot in the playoffs, but it's the way that they pick teams with the auto bids. It's a bit sketchy. I don't think they can afford to lose another game here. So I've got them minus 13. I think they're going to go out absolutely hungry. Andy, you took BYU. Am I going to take UCF? Absolutely not. In fact, just to lock it in because I want to get a win here, I bought some points here for BYU, I should say. So I got them at plus 7 just in case Gus Malzahn.
Jesus.
If Gus Malzahn wants to try and screw me, not going to happen. And hey, if I lose my parlay on this one, guess what? That means UCF gets a hell of a ranked win here. So positives either way. That's minus 247. Penn State minus 6.5 at Wisconsin. Penn State, they've struggled a tiny bit to put points on the board. Wisconsin hasn't really been super competitive offensively, though. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, and I just need Penn State to win by touchdown. That's minus 112. And then, Tom, I've got your team on here. Like Andy said, he's not taking Notre Dame to lose, but he did take Navy with the points. I'm taking Notre Dame, the other side of it, minus 11.5 here. I think it's going to be.
There's a scenario where we can both win, Brian.
There is. That would be nuts. But yeah, Navy, with that offense they run, going to be super low scoring, in my opinion, here because of how good Notre Dame's defense is. And Navy just runs a ton of time off the clock. So I think this could just be like a 21-7 game, if we're being honest. Or no, Andy would lose on 21-7, right? So we'll say like 21 to.
Yeah, we need a 12-point victory.
Okay, well, that's what I'm shooting for then. 12-point victory here, low scoring, and that's plus 1385, $10 to win, 149.56. I'm feeling it this week. It's spooky season, but I'm feeling one of us is going to get a win this week. And that'll bring us into our last segment of the week. It is, of course, Shots and Chasers, your roadmap to game day. And we're going to start off, we were just talking about them. It's Tom's team here taking on one of the academies. It's Navy taking on Notre Dame here. Tom, I'm going to start with you on this one because it is your team.
Absolutely. My team it is. 6-1 at 6-0. East Rutherford, New Jersey, home of the Jets and Giants. Awful stadium, but this is where the game is being played. I'm really excited to go. This is my first Notre Dame game in person. Being that they play in the Midwest, haven't been able to go out and see many games live, but been a lifelong fan, really looking forward to it. This is an offense this year that averages 34.5 points per game, 209 yards on the ground, behind Riley Leonard, who has improved week by week. Just 6 touchdown passes, but 10 rushing touchdowns for over 450 yards. Jeremiah Love has proven to fill the void of Audric Estime quite nicely this season. He's getting much better. Notre Dame's running back rotation is always 2 guys every single year. The complementary piece this year to Love's 7 touchdowns is Jadarian Price. He has 3 and over 320 yards on the ground. Not much of a passing team this year, but Clemson transfer Bo Collins leads the way with over 300 yards and a score. Jaden Greathouse, second year as a starter as well. But as Brian McCardle just mentioned, the teeth of this defense is the front 7. Howard Cross, 4 sacks. His father will be in attendance, former Giant and Super Bowl champion Howard Cross II. Riley Mills, 3 sacks. Another guy, Indiana bred. He's played very well back for a 5th year. Boubacar Traore has been really impressive in the interior as well. 3 sacks, 1 pick, and a forced fumble. And with Ben Morrison out in the secondary, Xavier Watts will have to step up. 5 passes defended, 3 picks. And the guy I've been most impressed by in that defense is linebacker Drake Bowen. Again, Notre Dame lost J.D. Bertrand to the draft and the Atlanta Falcons. Someone had to slide in next to Jack Kaiser. Drake Bowen is that guy. He'll be around for the next 2 seasons, most likely. Leads the team in tackles. Now, when you look at Navy, they've been dominant every game this season. They average just under 45 points per game, 275 yards on the ground. What's the key to the game for the Irish? Stopping the run and Blake Horvath. 10 touchdowns to 1 pick. Over 600 rushing yards and 10 scores on the ground. That's a pretty good ratio, Brian. If you combine rushing and passing touchdowns, 20-1. Pretty good damn ratio. Alex Tetcha as well, 7 touchdowns. You want to stop him. And I love Navy, man. Their 2 leading receivers are running backs. Eli Heidenreich has 5 scores on the year. Awesome name, by the way. They'll be calling that out on the PA system Saturday afternoon, and I'll be listening to it. Damn, that's a cool name. Brandon Chapman as well is a guy you have to watch if you are that defense. Jalen Sneed, the rover linebacker, will have to keep tabs on those 2. Defensively, they have some dogs back there. Deshaun Peel with 3 picks, Rayon Lane, with 2, and then Justin Reed has 4 sacks. So Notre Dame, a pretty banged up offensive line. I do agree here that Navy will cover this 12.5-point spread, but I think Notre Dame wins by 10.
All right, Andy?
Yeah, I don't know what more I can add to that. Awesome job by Tommy there covering his team. But I think the biggest thing I'm going to watch here is the quarterback matchup. It's 2 guys that can get it done in multiple ways. You think of Navy football. You do not think of throwing. But Blake Horvath has done that a little bit this year. 888 yards and 10 touchdowns through the air. By the way, he's added 10 TDs on the ground, 20 total, and 621 yards with his legs. He is a threat to hurt you in multiple ways. This Notre Dame defense will have their hands full. It's always interesting to me to see how these teams handle this wing T and this option offense because every team does it a little bit differently. And then Riley Leonard. I know Tom wasn't as thrilled with him at the beginning of the year, but I think he has performed very, very well throughout down the stretch. 1,182 yards, 3 interceptions, 16 total TDs for the Duke transfer. I am going to pick Notre Dame to win the game, but Navy to cover the spread.
All right, I love how Andy's got the spread on his parlay at 12.5. I've got mine at 11.5, and Tom at 10. So, I mean, at least we're all in the same ballpark. We'll see where it ends up. Yeah, listen, for me, it wasn't really an issue in my mind until Tom kept talking about how much he was concerned with him, and it's Riley Leonard. But he's looked decent, at least with his legs. He comes to the game. He's got a rushing touchdown in 6 straight games. That's the longest streak in FBS amongst QBs. Obviously, there's running backs with more. And then on the other side, you've got Navy quarterback Blake Horvath. He's just one of 2 FBS players with 10-plus passing and 10-plus rushing touchdowns. So the Navy, they do like to run it. They like to run those schemes. But, they're competent, at least with Horvath through the air. So I think that's what's kept them in the mix this year. And, they look good. But it's actually, saying that, it's a little wild to me that like a Navy QB, which, like I said, the way that they run their offensive system, that they have a more productive QB through the air than Riley Leonard, because, he wasn't terrible at Duke. I don't think he's terrible at Notre Dame. It's a little weird to see Navy with a competent QB, I guess. But yeah, now Navy's ranked. That's why this game is on our cards. Ranked matchup here in a neutral site, so that'll be really, really fun. But Navy, for me, they're just too untested. Their opponents are a combined 14-22, and it looks much, much worse on paper if you take out Memphis from the equation. That would bring their opponent's combined record down to 7-21. So not much. The Memphis, it was a good win, but the rest of their competition just hasn't been there. Notre Dame obviously already battle tested, and I think the much better team. So I'm going with Notre Dame here. That'll bring us into the Chaser for noon. It is the Battle of the Green Goblins here. We're gonna have a Halloween themed for every single time zone here, but it is North Texas taking on Tulane, the Mean Green versus the Green Wave. Andy, who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some offensive fireworks in this matchup. I think it's 2 very good offenses that are coming to the table here. You talk about this Tulane team. They've won 4 straight, and during that stretch, they're averaging 45 points per game. North Texas on the year is averaging just a shade over 41, and they've scored 30, at least 30, in all but one of their games this year. What are the Green Wave going to get from Mekhi Hughes? Big week for them last week against Rice, 27 carries, 140 yards, and a touchdown. Darian Mensah, he's got 1,400 passing yards coming into the game. And then if you look at the North Texas side, Chandler Morris, guys, does that name sound familiar? The former Oklahoma Sooner and TCU Horned Frog, now the starter for the Mean Green. And he has 23 touchdowns and 2,400 yards in just 7 games. The caveat to that, fellas, he's thrown 8 interceptions. So if he can take care of the ball, I like North Texas's chances here. But give me Tulane. I think they're the better team.
All right, Tom.
So this game, towards the top of the American, these 2 teams, North Texas coming off a rout. Actually, they're coming off a loss at Memphis, where they allowed 52 points. Chandler Morris, solid quarterback for them. He throws darts. DT Sheffield and Blaine Conright, really good receivers, especially Sheffield, man. 9 touchdowns, 565 yards. Their offense is air raid. They have 5 receivers with over 250 yards receiving. When I look at Tulane, they've lost 2 out of their last 3 games. But the common denominator is that at the time, they were both to ranked teams. Oklahoma no longer ranked, but they were ranked when they played. And then Kansas State as well. Darian Mensah has been improving throughout the course of the season, and that's because of their good running back duo they have, led by Mekhi Hughes, nearly 750 yards on the year with 8 scores. Arnold Barnes III, not too shabby himself. I want to see them get guys like Mario Williams and Dante Fleming more involved in the passing game, but they have a stout defense here with Patrick Jenkins and Tyler Grubbs. For me, I mean, this is just going to come down to the team that I think is playing better football right now, and seeing how Tulane played in those 2 ranked games, I'm going to go with them on this one. 8-point spread on the road, that might be more of the question for me, but Tulane wins outright.
Yeah, for me, having watched Tulane through UCF's time in the AAC, they always give us trouble. They're usually a pretty good team that falls in at least the top of the order, not always at the very top of the order of the American. And yeah, their defense, I think, is what they're going to be leaning on here. They've got a winning streak right now in the regular season that goes back to last season. 13 straight conference games. That's the longest in the nation. Like you said, Mensah, leading the Green Wave of Tulane. He's a true freshman, so he's got a lot of responsibility early, and he's looking good out there. He's not making too many mistakes. And his line has kept him fairly well protected. They've got 17 touchdowns on the ground as well. That's led by Mekhi Hughes, who has 744 yards and 8 touchdowns. Chandler Morris looks really good. The triple transfer, OU to TCU, now to North Texas. Incredible passer rating over his entire career. It was like almost 150. But yeah, I think Tulane is just too well balanced. Like you said, Tom, those 2 losses coming against two ranked at the time teams. Kansas State still ranked, so Oklahoma has fallen off, but still a big team for an American team to play. Their only losses to really good teams. Tulane. Yeah, I'm just gonna run with the green wave here. I almost just gonna convince myself to just take the more fun team in North Texas, but gonna keep it short before I go off on a tangent like last week. So I'm gonna go green wave. And then next up, gonna start with Andy because we got Andy's team here. It is number 20 Illinois, traveling all the way across the country to Eugene for a battle against number 1 Oregon. Andy.
So the Illinois football equipment truck left yesterday, I believe, to begin the 2,100-mile trek to Eugene. 1 day, 7 hours from Champaign to Eugene. Illinois leaving a day early, so they are leaving tomorrow on Thursday to get themselves acclimated. We've spoken on this show about the Big Ten teams traveling multiple time zones this year. It has not worked out very well. But Illinois is going into this game with absolutely nothing to lose, fellas. Number 1 on the road. May I remind you, the last time the Illinois Fighting Illini went on the road to face the number 1 overall team in the nation, they came out with a victory. Let me take you back to 2007 when the Illini took down the Ohio State Buckeyes. Do we see a repeat of that on Saturday? Fuck, I hope so. Illinois is going to have their absolute hands full, I think, in all aspects of this game. I think Dan Lanning's one of the best coaches in the country and has a very, very solid program there. We know what Dylan Gabriel can do, guys. He completes 77% of his passes. He takes care of the ball pretty well, just a shade over 2,000 yards on the year. Him, Luke Altmaier, and Curtis Work all tied for the lead in the Big Ten with 15 touchdown passes. So you got 2 of the top touchdown scores at the quarterback position in the Big Ten. Facing off against each other. Gabriel with 4 interceptions on the year. I would love to see the Illini defense get at him and force a turnover. What has been the identity of this Brett Bielema team? It is you do not beat yourselves. Run the ball, play good defense, and Illinois has been able to do that so far this year, and they've been able to throw it pretty well as well with 2 really, really good receivers catching the ball. You have the all-time, or not, I shouldn't say all-time, you have the active SBF leader in career catches, career receiving yards, and career touchdowns in Zachary Franklin with a lot of experience. You pair him with Pat Bryant on the other side, and the Illini have a couple weapons on offense. I am nervous about this game. It's a 21.5-point spread. I think if Illinois is able to not shoot themselves in the foot, able to take care of the ball, I see no reason why you won't be in this game. Very explosive Oregon offense. You got to limit the big plays there, and you're going to have to get a couple big plays yourselves. Jordan James has been incredible on the ground for the Ducks with over 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. They've got a couple guys on the outside. They're going to be playing on Sundays as well. Anytime you're going on the road to play number 1, you never love your chances, but it is an absolute David versus Goliath situation here, boys, and you have nothing to lose. Illinois Fighting Illini are coming out of Eugene victorious on Saturday. Book it.
Oh, shit. Tom, do you feel the same way here?
I will briefly and quickly talk my way through and then answer that question, Brian. This is the first time Oregon's been ranked number 1 since 2012. It's been 12 long years for them. Good for the Ducks. They're 21.5-point favorites. Disrespectful spread, but they are undefeated. It's a lock. They're not covering this spread. I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think that. Andy talked about all the guys on offense, and I think they're all legit weapons. Tez Johnson with those 7 touchdowns and 57 catches, wide catch radius too, really good player. Matayo Uiagalelei, he gets his last name pronounced correctly because he's actually good at what he does. 5.5 sacks on the season, really solid player. Jabbar Muhammad continued to impress me last week. And then Bryce Botcher at linebacker is no slouch either. Look, Brett Bielema should be in consideration for Big Ten Coach of the Year. I mentioned it last week. He has to be top 3 at this point, possibly even top 2 with the way they've been playing. Yeah, unfortunately, Caden Fagan's out for the year, but that means next man up. Josh McCray has been solid. Luke Altmaier needs to make plays. Pat Bryant needs to get the ball in his hands early and often. I want to see Zachary Franklin more involved too. Look, they have the guys, Yakis on the defense, Dylan Rosiak. And then both the Scotts and Cox, they're guys that could cause some turnovers in this game. And Dylan Gabriel's been in spots before where he has not looked all that great. However, I think the coaching of Dan Lanning will play a factor here, and the home crowd behind them. Unbiasedly speaking, Andy, I really do think Illinois has a shot to win this game. You're going to like and not like this answer. Or Oregon wins by less than 7 points.
That's like
by less than 7 points.
That's like heartbreak territory.
Yeah, I'd take it though. They literally have nothing to lose. I'll be fine either way.
Right. Honestly, I think that keeps you in. If you lose by less than 7 to Oregon, I think that keeps you in the ranking. So then, if you start running the table, still got a shot at the playoff. There.
Absolutely, as they should.
Yeah, I agree. For me, yeah, I'm not going to be able to cover Illinois as well as Andy did here, but they've been 3 top 25 teams already this season. That's after going 3-40 against ranked teams since the 2008 Rose Bowl. So that's kind of been their bugaboo. Getting past those ranked opponents, and they're producing now under Bielema, getting the wins that they need to, but they do come up against the number 1 team in the nation, at least in the polls. I know we spoke about that earlier. In the Ducks, led by my ex Dylan Gabriel, ex QB that is at UCF. They're now the number 1 team in the nation after taking down, after Georgia took down the previous number 1 Texas, Oregon. They're really well balanced. I know it seems to be the theme that UCF transfer QBs have all the talent, but for some reason become like super sketchy after they transfer. Gabriel has an incredible arm, but he makes some really odd decisions. Mikey Keene's been doing the same thing at Fresno State. So I would still love to have that talent at UCF, obviously, but it's been weird to watch, is what I'll say. And that's probably why, Dylan Gabriel isn't one of the leaders in the Heisman race here, as his team is number 1, which is a little weird to watch. But yeah, he's got 4 wide receivers with 300 plus yards that pair great with Gabriel's arm. My biggest concern here, because I really, really wanted to. I'm rooting for Illinois either way, but I really wanted to pick them. My biggest concern is going back to that Penn State game. The O-line got very, very tired late in the game, and it started putting a lot of pressure on Altmaier, forcing decisions, forcing bad plays, and forcing those sacks, which they just piled up. And Tom brought up the same guy, my player to watch here, Mateo Uiagalelei. He's got 5.5. Oregon has 20 sacks. If that O-line gets tired again against a really aggressive Oregon Ducks D-line, I think the same thing could happen. So it's been a few weeks. Hopefully they're hitting that conditioning over in Champaign to deal with it. But yeah, that's my biggest concern here, is that the D-line against this Illinois O-line that we saw get tired against the previous best team that they played so far in Penn State. So I'm gonna pick Oregon here. I really don't want to.
Coward.
But I do think it's going to be close. That 21.5 point line is just absolutely egregious. And I will obviously be rooting for your Illini, Andy. But I'm going Oregon here. And then bringing up the rear here in our midday slot, we have ranked Vanderbilt taking on number 5 Texas. Vandy is ranked. Everybody, stop the presses. Tell your parents, tell your grandparents, tell your kids. Andy, I'll start with you on this one again. I mean, gonna be a heck of a game, I think. But who do you think is gonna win this one?
Yeah, Vandy has had a magical run this year. They'd like to keep that going. Texas, obviously, last week with that tough result there at home against Georgia, the 30-15 loss where they just really looked like they, just weren't ready for that game. They weren't ready for the moment. Could it have been because they were overlooking the Georgia Bulldogs getting ready for this game against Vandy? Georgia was the trap game. But Diego Pavia has been awesome for Vandy. He's brought new life to this program. Last week they played Ball State. Chirp, chirp. We'll say chirp, chirp. In that 24-14 win, he was 17 for 31, 275 yards and a touchdown, 13 times on the ground for 82 yards and a touchdown. So he's going to have to do something of that nature. He's going to have to get loose a couple times. They're going to have a shot on 4th and 2 like they did in that Alabama game that turned into a touchdown. But I think Texas is going to be too much here. I think they bounce back, and I think they beat Vanderbilt.
All right, Tom.
Well. So we have ourselves a game in our hands. Texas favored by 18.5 points. Traditionally, I'd say that's not a lot of points, but this season it is. Vanderbilt is in the top 25 rankings. These teams have not met since 1928. It has been that long. Texas 6-1, Vanderbilt 5-2. Quinn Ewers has been hot and cold. Got benched for Arch last week, then re-enter the game. Their running backs are phenomenal with Wisner, Blue, Gibson. They have a 3-headed monster. Difficult for Vanderbilt to stop. Isaiah Bond has been really, really good for them at wide receiver. 4 touchdowns on the season. Gunnar Helm across the middle of the field. I like what he's done defensively for Texas. You got Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. Anthony Hill is a sideline-to-sideline scraper, boys. 50 tackles, 5.5 sacks. He's quick. He's electric. But Clark Lee has the Commodores on the rise, ladies and gentlemen. They are averaging 33 points per game on the year, led by Diego Pavia. They beat Alabama this season. Pavia, 11 touchdown passes, 3 on the ground. 470 rush yards. I like what they have in Cedric Alexander in the run game. Tight end Eli Stowers is the best part about this team. Nearly 500 receiving yards on the season. This defense held Kentucky to 12 points. This team is built for upsets. It'll happen again. Vanderbilt wins outright.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, the sky could be falling, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. I thought we were going to talk Vanderbilt up and everyone's going to sweep for Texas. So I'm a little shocked here. But yeah, so Texas QB Quinn Ewers coming off some rough performances. Obviously, we talked about him earlier. They put in Arch. Arch comes back out. Quinn Ewers does a little bit better. But yeah, Georgia just had his number. He was only completing 58% of his passes, only ended up with 211 yards, while the Bulldogs managed an interception and 2 fumbles out of him. So just not a great game for him. The game before wasn't that great. It could just be a product of Georgia's defense really stepping up. Like, Tom said, they have a case to be still the number 1 team in the nation despite that loss. And they look really locked in right now. So that's something we're going to have to watch in this game. But he did start the game just 6 of 12 for 17 passing yards. Obviously, this Vanderbilt defense isn't going to be as good as the Georgia Bulldogs defense was. But yeah, 17 yards on your first 6 drives, that's going to shake you to the core a little bit, even though you're going up against a weaker Vanderbilt defense here. It is at Vanderbilt. They jokingly, I don't know if this is real or not, but they, I guess, put up like a fake, or not fake, like a tall netting in front of where the student section will be for Texas fans because they were throwing things onto the field. Matthew McConaughey had to get involved and say, hey, cut it out. Someone said that was a joke, but the official Vandy account, like football account, I believe, tweeted the original picture. So I'm not sure if it's real or not yet because it's definitely not April Fool's. But yeah, that alone is enough to give Vanderbilt a little bit of an edge here because I think the Texas fans, if that is real, are going to be a little bit triggered having to sit behind a net, which is partially a joke and partially serious. But yeah, listen, Vanderbilt ranked for the first time in a decade. It's been incredible to watch. Diego Dimes, transfer QB, has a team on a roll. They get that win against number 1 Alabama, but I do not think they get another top 5 win here. They struggled against Ball State last year, who was just 2-4. That game was tied 14-14 at the end of the third quarter, and Pavia was only 17 for 31 through the air. So, late struggles here, midseason struggles for Pavia and Vanderbilt, but they've exceeded expectations regardless. So, I think they're a little bit competitive here, but I'm taking the Longhorns to win the game. And then moving into our night game here, we have Texas A&M versus LSU, ranked versus ranked matchup. This will be at Kyle Field at Texas A&M. All those weirdos in the stands practicing their chants and their everything they do with their roll calls the night before. Andy, who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, I think the big matchup here for me is going to be not Notre Dame. LSU's defense versus the Texas A&M running backs and that running attack. Since that week 1 loss to Notre Dame, Texas A&M has outrushed their opponents by 770 yards and won the rushing battle each week. Le'Veon Moss, 674 rush yards and 8 touchdowns on the year. I look for him to have a big game and Texas A&M to lean on him so they can control the clock, control that time of possession, keep the ball out of LSU's hands. What have we seen with LSU this year, guys? It doesn't matter how long you keep the ball out of their hands. They will come back and win games that they seemingly had no business winning and that they led for 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Last week against Arkansas, that defense stepped up big, only allowing 278 yards of total offense and 38 yards on the ground, forced 3 turnovers. I think if they're able to do that, Mike Elko's team could be in trouble, but they're at home. They're at Kyle Field. Give me the Aggies.
All right, Tom.
Look, LSU's coming off impressive 34-10 win on the road against the Hogs. Their guy under center, Grant Nussmeier, 18 touchdowns on the year. He's had Kyron Lacey, Aaron Anderson, and tight end Mason Taylor at his disposal all season long. Lacey, the leader amongst that trio. Caden Durham, A&M must stop him. He's a problem. Joshua Williams in the red zone as well. Swifty feet. And LSU defensively is impressive. Braden Swinson, Savion Jones, Whit Weeks has been phenomenal. And then you look at the Aggies. They're coming off a blowout win against Mizzou 2 weeks ago. They're 4-0 in the SEC right now. They average 218 rushing yards per game. Now, the argument I just made for LSU with their running game, what about Texas A&M? Can LSU stop the run? That's a big question. Connor Wegman relies on it. If LSU wants to win this game, they must control the line of scrimmage, make Wegman beat you. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, really good players on the ground. Noah Thomas in the pass game is their leading receiver, but just 21 receptions. For the Aggies, I love Will Lee III, Scooby Williams on that second level defensively. Spooky Scooby, we'll call him, and then Nick Storton looking to improve his draft stock with those 4.5 sacks. For me, the difference here, this was the game I didn't know who to pick. I'm going with LSU. I'm going the other way here. They've won on the road this season. Yes, Kyle Field's a tough place to play, but if Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman did it, why can't Brian Kelly? Why can't Brian Kelly? LSU wins. And by the way, boys, I know I got you there on that Vanderbilt one. I know it's a shocker. We'll have to talk about that post-show for sure.
Absolute shocker indeed. Yeah, listen, of all the talented teams in the SEC, we're sitting here in week 9, and this is the game that somehow is for the lead of the conference. We've talked a bunch of shit about Texas A&M, the way that they try to flood the NIL market with all their money, and it just hasn't worked. But they have things together now, under a first-year coach, which is a little surprising. Surprising, but not surprising, because Elko, we talked about him a lot last season. I think he was far and away one of our favorite picks during our coaching carousel talks. But yeah, it's just really odd that these are the two teams that could have a chance to take a lead in the SEC. LSU, led by Garrett Nussmeier, he's helped to provide the offense through the air, while freshman running back Caden Durham has added almost 400 yards and 6 TDs on the ground. Texas A&M boasts a very disciplined defense, however. They've held opponents to 20 points or less in 5 of their 7 games, so I don't think this is going to be a particular high-scoring one here. And I believe Texas A&M is favored by 2.5 in this one, despite LSU being the higher-ranked team. So Vegas thinks it'll be close. I also think it'll be a little bit low scoring. On the offensive side here for Texas A&M, personally, at the beginning of the season, I said they probably should have stuck with Marcel Reed. I thought he was the way to go after Wakeman had a slow start and then, the injury that followed. But Wakeman's looked really calm, really cool, really collected since returning from that shoulder injury. And he's getting a lot of help from their O-line, who's only posted 1 game where they've allowed their QB to get sacked more than 1 time. That's both for Reed and Nussmeier's action. Excuse me. Reed and Wegman's action under center there for Texas A&M. So certified brick wall for Texas A&M. Tom, you're talking about controlling the line of scrimmage. LSU, it's going to be difficult because they've lost 2 of their best defensive players for the season, linebacker Harold Perkins and defensive lineman Jacoby and Guillory. They're out. So holes, obviously, LSU's got money. They've got talent. There'll be a deep squad, but especially Perkins Jr. That's a tough loss to have against a Texas A&M team that's pretty well-rounded on offense. The home team has won the last 7 meetings between these two. Like I said, Mike Elko doing a hell of a job here as a first-year coach of the Aggies. 110 in Kyle Field. I know I like to call him weird, but everything just sort of lines up here for me to take the Aggies. And that'll bring us into the last game. We're trying this for the first time here. This is a pick your poison for a Halloween-themed game. 3 potential rivalry upsets, ranked versus unranked. We got one that's unranked versus unranked, but had to throw it in there to give the boys 3 options. So I'm letting you guys choose. Let me know which one you're going to cover here. We had FSU versus Miami, Kansas State versus Kansas, or Michigan versus Michigan State. Andy, who's your spooky rivalry upset potential here?
Upset potential would be Michigan State over Michigan. I think Chiles is the better quarterback. I think they have more juice than Michigan does right now. Always seems to be a weird game in this rivalry. So give me Michigan State over Michigan.
All right, Tom? You're on mute, buddy.
Sorry, boys.
There we go.
So out of these 3, I do agree with Andy. I think Michigan has the best chance. Michigan State has the best chance to upset Michigan. New coach, new regime. But Miami plays close football games. I think Florida State's going to cover this 21-point spread. I don't think they're going to win the game outright, but I do think there's potential for this game to be closer than what's advertised. So I'm going to roll with this one here. Miami's going to win the game, obviously, but Florida State, for some reason, that defensive front is the only good part about this team. They can't run the football. Brockland, only a 50% completion percentage. But here is the key statement I'm going to make. Miami has won their last 3 games by a combined 12 points, despite having all these weapons on offense, right? Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, Xavier Restrepo. That number right there is what you have to watch out for. So I do think it's going to be closer than people think.
Yeah, you surprised us with the Vandy pick. I'm going to surprise with this one here because I believe truly the best chance of upset here is FSU over Miami. FSU has just looked god-awful this season. But like we said, like we've had to talk about because they're forcing us to, Miami is barely scraping by with these wins. And this is one of those rivalries where both teams just absolutely hate each other. Obviously, FSU's rivalry with Florida is a little bit bigger, I guess, historically. But in terms of being at the top of the game, FSU Miami games, especially with the fans and the players, can get out of control. So I think, FSU season absolutely over, which I think is why they have nothing to lose here. This is one of those games where they're going to be in the locker room and say, hey, let's ruin Miami's season. Our season, it's done. We're can't even get into a bowl game at this point, I believe. So let's go out there and wreck our rivals' chances at not only a bowl game, but a playoff now that we have 12 teams. So I'm going to go with FSU with a surprise upset alert over Miami. And that is going to wrap up our Halloween show. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the games this weekend. Enjoy your Halloween next Thursday. And any spoilers? You guys going as anything for Halloween next week?
Fuck no, Brian.
I don't know. You got a kid, so I don't know how that...
Exactly. What I'm going as is the dad fucking walking down the street with a beer in his hand. That's what I'm going as.
All right. Beer dad. I love it. Anyways, that's going to wrap up our show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Andy and Tom for joining me. There are links down in the description as well as ours. Be sure to like and follow my boys here. We'll see everybody back here next week. Same time, same place for week 10.